Hey everyone, it's Amber, and you're listening to a Bright Idea podcast, a show where I talk to entrepreneurs about the aha moments that launched their businesses. If you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening in your car, I am solo today. I do not have a guest. I wanted to come on here to just give you guys an update on what I have been doing the last few weeks since my last solo episode, where I talked about getting laid off but not left behind. And my update is 43 interviews later, your girl has a job. So, that is something to celebrate. 43 interviews later, we are, I almost said unemployed. We are employed, and we are very happy about that. If you guys haven't listened to the episode, I talked about getting laid off from my company. My entire department was restructured at the end of March. And in the episode, I talked about the importance of having multiple streams of income, and that it is not imperative for you to start a business that you're going to quit your 9 to 5 and become a 100% entrepreneur, but rather being able to have a rainy day fund using another stream of income, so that when the time comes, because as we are continuing to see, no one's really safe in whatever industry that you're in. People are getting laid off every single day. And so to kind of just alleviate some of that stress and that financial burden, to really lean into having a secondary or tertiary, if you have the time, form of income. So if you haven't listened to it, you can listen to it anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's also on YouTube if you want to watch it. But for those people that have listened to it, I really wanted to take the time for a second to thank all of the people that have reached out, just with gratitude for me sharing a very vulnerable experience and being a little bit relatable to what people are going through, but also adding some advice in there. Like, I'm here for y'all. Like, I've been through it. I'm going through it, or I went through it, and knock on wood, won't go through it for a while, but I really wanted to just thank all of the people that reached out. And then I wanted to also thank the people that watched this and who know me and have my number or email address and reached out with contacts for jobs that I could go apply to. So thank you. And I did take some of those considerations. So really just love the community that I've built here on a Bright Idea podcast, and really love that we can all help each other and benefit from sharing information. So don't stop there. So wanted to take that moment. But today I wanted to come on here and just give a little bit of an update on getting laid off and what I learned from that experience, because what I found was, and I'll get into it a little bit on this new job and how it came to be, but what I found was that job interviews and the way that we are applying for jobs have changed so dramatically, and there's really a formula to do this. And I know that applying for new jobs or looking for jobs is a full-time job, and it oftentimes gives people a lot of anxiety to even start. And so I really wanted to alleviate that, because one thing that I know that I talk to entrepreneurs on this podcast, but at the end of the day, whether you're an entrepreneur running your own business or you're an intrapreneur running a business within your 9 to 5, everyone has a brand, and everyone needs to understand the way to operate and kind of like work through the system in order to achieve their goals. And so I really wanted to come on here and talk about some of the things that I learned, and hopefully share some of my insights to help one of you out there who has been laid off or fired, or, and if neither are the case, that lucky for you. But if you're in a situation now with a job that you don't like, that you can pivot using some of the advice that I'm going to give today. So without further ado, whatever, we're going to move on to it. Move on. Without any more hesitation, I'm going to share with you my new job experience. So it's really funny because when I posted my solo episode, Laid Off But Not Left Behind, that was about 2 weeks before my entire team was laid off from our job. And I would be lying to you if I did not tell you that I was filled with anxiety. I posted it because I really wanted to help other people who are experiencing the same thing, but I wanted to, it was also sort of like the fire that I needed under my behind to go out and find additional income, and kind of give myself a distraction to what I was going through with this whole corporate thing. And so while I was recording that podcast, in addition to working on other episodes for you guys, so stay tuned, I was also interviewing. And so I interviewed with 43 companies, 43 people, several companies. I need to go back and tally how many companies I actually spoke with. But when you're like, and for the people that are listening, you all know that when you're interviewing with a company, you have like 4 or 5 interviews with different people. So in total, I interviewed with 43 people. I just have to like reiterate because that was so egregious. And finally, on the very last interview, I got an offer. So it actually came as a buzzer beater, an overnight success, in my opinion, that I was laid off on March 31st and then on April 1st got an offer from this job. So I am eternally grateful to my network, to my community, and to my own tenacity for not giving up when there were days where I definitely was not doing well and was like, I don't know what's next for me. So, the reason that I wanted to make this follow-up episode is because if you watched the last episode where I was like really pouring my heart out at the fact that like I was losing my job, and it's easier when you lose a job that you don't really like or one that's not very fitting for you, but the fact that I really loved my job and so I was really sad to have to part ways with it, to all of a sudden today I'm telling you that I have another job. I wanted to be very transparent to you guys today, to share that it took time and that I was interviewing since I got the news that we would be laid off to the very end when I got this role. And so through 43 interviews, there were so many lessons that I learned along the way. And I think that one of the things that I love about this podcast and the people that I get to talk to is that from speaking with you all, and from like the experiences that people share, it has really taught me how to think like a business owner in all aspects of my life and as in all aspects of my career. And how we talk a lot about branding is such a buzzword, but when it comes to branding and putting yourself out there, that is really what is going to get you ahead in a lot of situations. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about that today and share some strategies that you can use in your process of finding a new job. Okay, so I decided that I'm going to break this episode down into 6 lessons that you can take with you into your next job search or interview. So the first one that I want to talk to you about is I want to talk about growth through repetition. Again, I'm going to keep honing in on the fact that I interviewed 43 times. And what you learn by doing that is that it is a numbers game. If you work in sales and you're listening to this episode, anyone that works in sales knows what numbers game means. And so for those of you who don't work in sales, it is very easy to be rejected 1 or 2 or 3 times and to just give up. But what you have to realize in these job interviews is the fact that, or job searches, is the fact that it is imperative that you keep going. A lot of times what I found in interviewing with companies is that sometimes they already have the candidate that they want in mind. And so you're just somebody that they have to interview for, protocol of the company. And so that's already like, you're not going to get that job anyway. Another situation is that you may be qualified, but maybe it's just not a good fit. And so being able to have the mindset that it is a numbers game and that repetition is really how you're going to get the job that you want. If you keep that in mind through every rejection that you go through, you will be A-okay. The one thing that I want to talk to you about is storytelling. And I think that one of the things that I learned from working on this podcast is that storytelling really matters. One of the things that I learned is how important storytelling is. When I do interviews on this podcast, people have such amazing stories and journeys of where they came from and how they got to where they are today. But we only have an hour's time to share that story and really share what is the most relevant part of the story that is going to pique the audience interest. The same thing goes for in interviews. A lot of times you only have about 30 to 45 minutes to talk to someone and really sell your story. So what I did was, when I would be going on these interviews, I would look at the job description and I would look at exactly, if you lock in, a lot of times they tell you what kind of candidate you're looking for. And so what I would do is I would take that description of the type of candidate that they were looking for, and I would take my experience and I would tailor my experience to exactly what they were looking for, and then practice telling my story in a very concise way. A lot of times when we go into these interviews, and one of the first questions that recruiters or hiring managers ask are, tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, if you've been in the industry for a while, like me, I mean, I've been in the industry for 10 years. There's a lot I can tell about myself, starting from my very first job to now, and where I went to high school or where I went to college and what I studied in college and how I transitioned and pivot. They don't want to know all of that. What they want to know is the most relevant story that you have to tell that is relatable to the job that you are applying to. So one of the things that we learn in sales, medical sales specifically, that I think they do a really great job of training us to do this, that I want to share with you if you guys don't already know, is something that's called the STAR method. So the STAR method is a format in which, like an interviewing style format. And what it stands for is STAR. So S stands for situation. If the person that is hiring you is asking you a specific question, you talk about the situation. What was the situation? It's about 2 or 3 sentences. And then you move on to what was the task? So if they ask you a question like, can you tell me a time where you had to overcome working with a difficult coworker? What was the situation? What was the task? The next is the action. So what did you do that take action for overcoming working with a difficult coworker? And then the last thing is the result. What was the result? Not only is this helpful to share to get creative and share and kind of help you stand out from the rest of the competition or candidates that they're interviewing, but it also helps you remain concise. A lot of times we get into these interviews and we're so nervous and we want to just share like everything there is to know about ourselves, and that actually does not help you get to the next interview, especially when you have 30 to 40 minutes to talk about yourself. The second lesson that I want to share is that you can't walk into these interviews desperate. I like to share this part because I was desperate. When I found out that I was getting laid off, I had a level of anxiety that was like no other. I was like, I have to find a job. I need to get a job. I can't go a few days or weeks without income, even though I have this podcast on the side. Like, I need my benefits, all of the things. So I had a level of stress that people can sense in an interview. Also, I was working with my entire team was getting laid off at the time. And so I knew that there were other people on my team who were interviewing and getting roles. And so hearing that kind of put me in this like anxious state where I would go into these interviews and I'd be like basically giving the energy of like, I need this job. You don't want to do that because it kind of clouds your judgment, for you and the interviewer. The interviewer can see that you are anxious, that you need this job. You may not want this job, but you need it. And so that takes you out of the running too. But then on the other hand, for yourself, it kind of clouds your judgment on like, if this is actually the right fit for you. So a lot of times when we're put in these positions where something is taken from us, we think that we have to go out and grab the first thing just so we can have that sense of security. Don't do that. Put yourself a little bit at ease by not feeling desperate or that you need this job, but that you want this job and that you're an asset to this team and that you bring value to this company. The third one is relationships more than applications. And I know everyone says this. When you go on LinkedIn and you look up a role, you can see that there are hundreds of people that have clicked applied to this job. And that alone is kind of like defers you from wanting to apply. But what I've noticed, and yes, there have been opportunities where I've seen job postings on LinkedIn and I've clicked apply and I've gotten an interview that way. But more times than not, I've gotten interviews based on talking to my network. I'm not saying to go to the next networking event or coffee meetup or whatever. I'm saying tap into your friends, tap into your parents' friends, tap into people that you've worked with in previous jobs. One of the ways that I was really able to put myself out there and have multiple interviews was one, by posting that I was getting laid off online and sharing it with the world, which I know that people are a little hesitant to be that vulnerable, but I think we live in a time right now where and don't put all your business out there, but I think that by people knowing that you're looking for something rather than being embarrassed or hiding, especially when everyone's kind of going through the same thing, it actually helps more than it hurts to find your next big thing. Another thing that really helped me is when I would be applying to jobs at different companies that I wasn't very familiar with, I would go onto LinkedIn and find people that had the same role as the position that I was applying to, and I would cold email them. I know that that's scary for some people, but think about this. 9 times out of 10, you're never going to meet these people in real life, especially like if you're like me and you work in sales and there's several offices and territories all over the country. 9 times out of 10, these people either will not respond to you, which is one thing, or they'll respond to you and give you like a little bit of information that you didn't already know. And sometimes, and this has happened to me a lot, I will be bold. This is when I was desperate. Like, you can be desperate, but don't like let people know that you're desperate. But one thing that really helped me is I would message somebody that I saw had the same job, description as the one that I was applying to. And I'd be like, hey, it's so nice to meet you. I work in neuroscience for X company and I have this many years of experience. I saw that you work in the same, field. I was wondering if you knew who the hiring manager was for the Washington, D.C. territory. And lo and behold, people would reach out and they would help you. And what do you do when that happens? You take that contact that they gave you, you run and you email that person, but then you also thank them. And then if they reach out to you, you help them in return. I feel like it's definitely one of those situations where you get the most by giving the most. So don't be stingy and don't be selfish. Like, really thank people and return the favor when they've helped you out. The next thing I want to talk about seems so simple, but people really don't do this, is preparation. Before you go into any interview, if the recruiter tells you who the hiring manager is, you need to look up who they are, what they do at the company, and have some questions. Go on their website, look at their content, look at their material, talk to people. I can't tell you how many times I went into an interview where a hiring manager would be like, "So who did you talk to in the company?" And at first you'd be like, "Oh my God, wait, what? Like, why are they asking me who I talked to in the company?" No, people want to know that you did your research, that you talked to people on the team to learn about the company. And for example, with me, I work in medical sales, so we have medications that are either launching or medications that are already on the market. They want to know that you know that medication. They want to know that you know who the competitor is. They want to know that you've already done the homework for how it works. Whatever industry that you're in, whether it's sales or not sales, it could be literally anything. Do your due diligence by being prepared so that when you go into these interviews with people, they know that you want to be there, and 2, did your homework. My next tip is that using my unique background is actually my advantage. So when I first started interviewing at different companies, I was a little hesitant to share that I had a podcast. I know a lot of times companies want you to be very serious about their company. But what I was finding was that, first of all, my podcast is a little different than other podcasts. I don't hop on a mic and talk about pop culture or, the latest thing happening in the world and giving opinions. My podcast is an educational podcast, more specifically a business podcast. And since I work in business, I've been able to use it to my advantage because it's helped me not only in my business acumen, but it's also helped me be an active listener, to prospect, because I have to go out and find guests to be on this show. I've been a really great communicator. I've been able to answer and deliver information concisely. And those are all things that I can really use in the interview that can help me stand out from other candidates. So if you have special skills outside of your work and that are relevant to the job that you're applying for, use that in the interview. People want to know that your job isn't your only identity and that you have very interesting things that are going on outside of your 9-to-5 that are applicable to a role that they can find value in. So I can't tell you how many times people have been in job interviews that I've been in where the hiring manager or the recruiter has been like, "I listened to an episode of your podcast and you're a really great interviewer. How did you get that? How'd you get that guest on? And like, what are some of the transferable skills you think would be great in this role?" And I'm like, "Oh, let me tell you, since you asked." So use that to your advantage. The last thing I want to talk to you about is, as you guys know, this is an entrepreneurship podcast. It's a business podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs about the aha moments. So I can't leave you guys from this episode today without talking to you about business ownership. But I wanted to kind of tie it all together with why entrepreneurship helped me get hired. And and the framework and mindset that I want you guys to think about when it comes to your job search and how to think like an entrepreneur. So when I was going into my 43 interviews, y'all are going to get tired of me saying that. When I went into my 43 interviews, I thought of my interviews as sales calls. So thinking about interviews as sales calls. What do you do on a sales call? When you go into a sales call, you are trying to get as much information as you can from the company so that you know that this is like what you're up against when it comes to being hired for this role. So not only are when you go on a sales call, it's sort of like this back and forth communication. You tell me a little bit about yourself. They tell you about themselves. You play sort of this game, with each other in finding more information. So when you think about going on these interviews, use it as I'm going in to make a sales call. And lastly, what I always tell people when you think about interviews as sales calls, it's always about the close. It's always about the close. I'm going to say it one more time. It's always about the close. At the very end of every interview, you want to ask one question. Based on the conversation that we had today, is there anything preventing you from hiring me on your team or hiring me today? It sounds bold. It's very assertive, but it will be the differentiator. Don't ever leave an interview without asking that question. The next thing is your resume is your brand positioning. So I'm going to give you guys a little secret. I don't just share my resume. I share a one sheet about me. And I'll share it up on the screen so you guys can take a look at it yourselves. But your resume, I have been in so many interviews where these hiring managers or these recruiters are interviewing so many people that all they do is take like a little glance at your resume. So one thing that I do is, yes, I'll share a traditional resume, but I will highlight the areas that I want them to see. I will highlight like my brand summary, if you will, or like who I am, what kind of employee I would be if you hired me. Then I highlight some of my highlights. So I call them my brag books. So I highlight areas in which I've succeeded in different roles. I also highlight areas that are very similar to the job description or the job posting so that they can see that, oh, this girl is exactly who we're looking for. In addition to that, I always think of myself as a brand. So I put together a one sheet that talks about the different jobs that I've had, what my differentiators are, and why you should hire me. This is how I use it. So when I go into a job interview, the first question that they're going to ask, Amber, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? I'm looking at your resume and see that you have so much experience. Walk me through your resume a little bit. And I say, yes, thank you so much for your time, first of all. But I would like to, if you would allow me, I would like to share a one sheet that I put together for you that kind of highlights, that gives you more of a visual on who I am. If you would allow me to share my screen, this is if you are on Zoom or on Teams. If you're in person, I always have a sheet printed out, and it needs to be in color. Don't ever print out one sheet or a resume in black and white. And nobody does that, by the way. So that is a standout way. Like, that's a way to really stand out, and it helps you build your brand. The next thing is networking. So networking is business development. Again, when you are applying over and over and over and over and over again on Indeed or on LinkedIn, and you're sitting in a pile of 1,500 applications, the chances of you getting an interview are so much slimmer than using your network. So people that are in the industry that have worked with you at other companies, your parents' friends, that's one thing I want to lean into, your parents' friends, because my parents are on the tail end of their careers and so are their friends, but they have so many resources and know so many people in the industries. Tap into those people because first of all, they want to teach you something, but secondly, they know where all the bones are buried. So use them as your business development. I think sometimes it's so easy. Like I'm a millennial and I'm on like the younger side of millennials. So I also work with a lot of people that are from Gen Z. And one thing that we do is we only talk to each other, or we talk to like amongst ourselves because we're like, ugh, boomers, like, ugh, Gen X, ugh, they don't know anything. They know everything and they want to teach. So lean into those people. They know who the hiring managers are. They know how to get through the door. They know who to contact. Use that network as your business development. The next thing I want to talk about is rejection. Rejection equals failed pitches. How many times have you, as if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening and you made a pitch to a competition and you lost? It sucks. It does, especially when you put so much time and effort into it and you thought you were going to get a job. I can't tell you how many times. I mean, out of 43 interviews, I thought I was going to get like 5. There were 5 times I thought I was going to get a job. And then I was like rudely awakened by like, no, they went with another candidate. But what you learn from those failed, those rejections are lessons. One thing, and this doesn't happen all the time, but one thing that you should do is reach out to the companies that, rejected you or you didn't get a job from and ask for feedback and be like, say something like, it was so good to meet with you, and I really enjoyed our time together. I understand that you decided to go with another candidate, but if you would be willing to share some feedback as I proceed into other interviews, I would love to know where I can improve. If they get back to you, you can use that feedback for the next interview, and work on your pitch. Think about rejection not as like you lost, but as a lesson to push forward. The last thing I want to talk to you about is following up. I know that it sounds so basic to send a thank you, but if you don't send a thank you, you're not getting a job. Like it amazes me how many people actually don't send follow-up emails to the people that they interview with. When you are finished interviewing with somebody, always follow up. People remember that. And you never know if down the line another position opens up and they remember you because they have your email sitting in their inbox and they reach out to you and say that they have a position open for you and if you would like it. So always do that. I know that was a pretty quick episode, guys, but I just wanted to hop on and share like what worked for me. If you loved this episode, leave a review, tell all of your friends. And if you would like for me to share more solo episodes or have ideas for what you would love for me to talk about next, let me know. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, I know that I have guests on to talk about business and entrepreneurship, but really we're all in the same boat when it comes to making money and doing a really good job. And whether you're a business owner or you're trying to grow in your career, I think that we can all learn from one another and some strategies that have helped us and that have helped me. I would love to help you. So thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week.